Hi, and welcome to Conectados, a weekly space where we connect with resources, technology, ideas, neighbors, stories, and much more. I am your host, Cris Oviedo, and I am very, very happy to be with you today. Conectados is a space that looks to connect us to one another and bring us together. And today we're going to connect with financial wellness. We will also look at the events coming up in our weekend, in our county this weekend. But I wanted to start connecting with the Day of the Dead, or as we say it in Spanish, El Día de los Muertos. And this is a day that is observed and celebrated all around the world in remembrance of those who have passed before us. This holiday combines the ancient Aztec custom of celebrating ancestors with All Souls Day, a holiday that was brought to America by the Spanish invaders in the early 1500s. If we go back in time around 3,000 years, we will see that the Aztecs saw death as an integral, ever present part of life and believed that upon a person's death, their souls traveled to the land of the dead, where in order to reach Mictlan, which is the final resting place, they had to get through 9 challenging levels, a journey that could take many, many years before a soul could finally rest in peace. This is why, on the Day of the Dead, family members traditionally bring food, water, and tools to their loved ones' graves as ofrendas, as we call them in Spanish, to aid the deceased in their journey. In medieval Spain, they held similar traditions, bringing wine and spirit bread, or pan de animas, to the graves of their loved ones, along with flowers and candles to illuminate the dead souls' way back to their homes on earth. The combination of this tradition has given way to the celebrations that we know today, where it is believed that on the Day of the Dead, the border between the spirit world and the real world dissolves. During this brief period, the souls of the dead awaken and return to the living world to feast, drink, dance, and play music with their loved ones. In turn, the living family members treat the deceased as honored guests in their celebrations and leave the deceased favorites, foods, and other offerings at gravesites or on the altares built in their homes. The altars can be decorated with candles, flowers, especially bright marigolds that are called in Spanish cempasúchil. They bring fruit, dead bread, or pan de muerto, skulls, and other colorful and meaningful objects. One of the most recognized symbols of the Day of the Dead, the Catrinas. Let me see if I can find it back here in this video that I was sharing with you just now. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the Catrinas right there. You can see a Catrina right there. So that's one of the most recognized symbols of the Day of the Dead. And this Catrina dates back to the early 20th century, when the cartoonist Jose Guadalupe Posada incorporated skeletal figures in his art, mocking politicians and commenting on revolutionary politics. This fancy dressed skeleton adorned with makeup has transcended through time, and it actually makes allusion to the fact that Mexican people wanted to renounce their origin and wanted to be more they wanted to be more recognized as European and Spaniard. So that's why the fancy clothes are, that's why the fancy makeup is. It's kind of like a renunciation of Mexican traditions. And this was, a way that this cartoonist, and a way that also Frida Kahlo's husband, his name escapes me right now, Diego Rivera, he also brought this Catrina to life in the way that we know it today, that we see today in so many spaces, in so many places, just as a commentary more than anything else. So, and now it's one of the most iconic symbols of Dia de los Muertos, and I'm sure that we will see some Catrinas tomorrow for Halloween and in this coming weekend. El Dia de los Muertos is celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. And in Ecuador, my home country, let me play this again real quick because I do want to share this with you guys. This is a tradition where you're about to see here the colada morada. This right here, this is a special drink that we only make in Dia de los Muertos. It's a sweet purple drink that's made of purple corn, a combination of the fruits and spices that you were seeing on the screen, herbs. It is served with a traditional, I know the name is kind of weird, children of bread or baby bread. So, yes, what you would call it. What was the fun is what we call it in Spanish. And, I mean, really, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what traditions you may or may not have, whether you have celebrated this before or not, whether it is a religious tradition for you, or if it's just something that you think about in Halloween, maybe, or that you have been exposed because of also many immigrants that we are here in this country now. I just invite you to, take a moment and at home and honor your loved ones. Last week I talked about All Souls Day and All Saints Day. That's also part of this tradition. This whole tradition of Dia de los Muertos it's kind of a combination of the Celts traditions and how they celebrated the passing of um, fall to winter. With All Souls Day, All Saints Day is the Christian or the Catholic tradition, and it has kind of merged. That fusion that has happened through immigration is what has given way to the Dia de los Muertos as we know it today. So if you have family members who have passed away, take some time this weekend. Take some time this weekend to honor their memories. Um, maybe create your own tradition. Maybe create your own little tradition at home with your family and start something special today. Now, October is financial planning month. And let me just make this. There we go. October is financial planning month. It's an opportunity to get your finances and budgets in order before life gets too busy with the holiday season that it's coming upon us. And to talk about financial wellness, I am joined today by the executive director of Making Change, Jasmine Brewer. She's a native of Chicago who transitioned to the DMV area in 2015. Jasmine is a professional with ample experience in community and economic development, demonstrated through the successful development and execution of affordable housing plans, as well as strategic plans for nonprofits, and through direct support to individuals and families reaching their goals through housing counseling. Jasmine is a professional with an impressive record in the management and oversight of nonprofit organizations. She's also a strong advocate, and she's also a passionate leader who serves individuals and families from diverse communities while helping them achieve financial stability. And I have to say, I had the pleasure of meeting Jasmine when we took Leadership Howard County together, and all of the things that I just read you about Jasmine, I can tell you that they are true, and they're not even enough to just talk of this amazing individual who truly loves to serve our community. So Jasmine, it is really a pleasure to welcome you this morning to Conectados. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. And I always love to start our conversations whenever I have guests, getting to know my guest a little bit, because we all have a story. We all are doing what we're doing for a reason. And I just love to connect with the person before we connect with the mission that you're carrying on today. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. So I am originally from Chicago, born and raised. And I grew up with a mom who was very active community wise. So she did a lot of work with Obama back when he was running for Senate in the state of Illinois, and also worked in the nonprofit sector a lot herself. So I think that some of this was just kind of ingrained as I was coming up. I In terms of how I got here, man, I mean, I have always had an interest in just community work, period, because I have found how pivotal that can be and how significant that can be for making a change where you live, or seeing an issue and seeing a gap and wanting to contribute to how do we close that. So with that, I actually got into this space while I was working on my master's in urban planning. I did have an internship. Actually, I didn't get the internship, but I ended up getting a job with a nonprofit and started my career working in fair housing and predatory lending, which led to the foreclosure crisis. There was a lot of that activity that we didn't realize necessarily was coming along. And so once I finished my master's in urban planning and policy, I worked for that company full time and ended up creating what I didn't know anything about, which was creating a HUD housing counseling program. And in that, it just opened up a whole new world of all of these different nuggets that I felt like I received coming up or through my education and through my experience in working with community groups that really nailed down and had a firm best practice system and curriculum as it relates to financial education. Oftentimes I get the question of, well, you're a housing counseling agency. How does that help me? I want to work on my credit. Well, you can't get to much else in life unless you address the financial piece of it. So I moved to Maryland in 2015, November 2015, worked for a not national nonprofit in DC that focused on affordable housing and did a lot of community reinvestment projects around the country to create affordable housing options for low to moderate income communities. Did that for about 3 years and then transitioned back into their housing counseling network, which then gave me the opportunity to work with a lot of housing counseling agencies across the country. So seeing what these different trends look like in Tennessee, in New Mexico, in California, as well as the Midwest, it gave me a whole new spectrum in terms of how to look at this and get back into the grassroots work that I really enjoy. And I came to Making Change in March 2021. And my role was simple to just really amplify and rebuild, revitalize the organization so that we could make sure that we could increase our capacity to serve more Howard County residents in our housing, counseling, and financial education services.
Jasmine, you spoke about many different things that really resonated with me. I was actually a realtor when the housing crisis happened in 2007. So I definitely felt it. And that was a big eye-opening moment for me because I realized that, you talked about predatory lending and stuff like that. And the programs were fantastic. The problem is that we were misutilizing them. um, you know, and we were not thinking about the common good. We were not thinking about the good of the person. We were thinking about the commissions, really. Those who were doing that kind of work without thinking about, without talking about affordability, without really looking at the situation of the final customer and whether they could afford or not that $1 million home, just because they could qualify for it because the loan programs at that time allowed you to pretty much just raise your hand and say, that's the house that I want. That gave me a huge awareness of the fact that if just because something is good doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right thing for me to do. Just because it's available doesn't mean that it's necessarily something that I need to go ahead and get. So that was a huge eye-opening moment for me. And I know that we're going to touch on this when we talk about financial literacy and financial wellness and what one means against the other. But, thinking about that, thinking about, what happened back then, where we are today, what is making change? What is making change? How is making change helping individuals make better decisions, right? At least have that awareness, that understanding that maybe that's not the right product for me, or maybe, this is how I live my life and this is what my goals are financially. And this is how making change is helping me make the right decisions so that hopefully I don't end up in a situation like what we saw back in 2007.
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about what we do is that our job is not to tell you what to do. Our job is to educate and inform and give you the pros and cons of what that looks like. So, of course, we have our financial management program that focuses on credit, managing your finances in terms of building a budget. Do you have a budget? What does that look like? Do you know what a budget is? Debt management. And then we also have, and our, I should say, our financial services expand past that, but we also have our housing services that relate to pre purchase and rental. And so, first things first is that anyone that contacts, we do primarily serve Howard County. So if you contact us, and whether it's group education or one-on-one, first of all, the service is free. Second, this is a non-judgmental space.
Mm.
So, up until a couple of years, I will say up until last year or earlier this year, I was still working with clients one-on-one and then had to shift that over to the staff. But in those conversations, whether it's me or it's one of the housing counselors that you talk with, that our goal is not to tell you that this is what you have to do. So first things first is helping clients really get a thorough and clear picture of where they are financially. One of the first things we ask clients to do is to send us a budget. And 9 times out of 10, most folks don't necessarily have a budget, and that's okay. This whole process is about getting you and getting the client into a space of being more in tune with what money they have coming in and what money they have going out and how that's being expended. So when we talk about things like you're referring to with pre-purchase, our role is to tell you, well, here are your options. This is based upon your credit score. This is based upon the financial, the mortgage product that they might be looking to select, and really understanding what their affordability is. We help them calculate that, what we call their debt to income ratio, as well as in connection with your budget to see, can you afford this long term? Because the whole idea here is stability.
Mm.
It's not to get someone into a house and then, your house rich, but everything else is struggling. There's nothing worse. I will be totally transparent here. I mean, I think the first property that I purchased, I probably shouldn't have. I probably should. And I've been doing this work. I had been doing the work at the time for probably about maybe 6 years. And so you think you know all these things. However, facts are facts. Like if it's not going to be manageable or sustainable based upon what you're bringing in. And these are some of the things that we talk about with clients where, your current financial state today might not be what it is in a year. And that's whether it changes in the positive or the negative, and whether that changes in terms of you may lose income or have a loss of employment and have to find new employment, or your income goes up. So some of the things that we talk about with clients are, some of those scenarios. Do you have savings? So we know that the rule of thumb for savings is often that you want to have 3 to 6 months of savings. And we're not talking about down payment savings to purchase a home. We're talking about emergency savings. Something happens, your car breaks down, or you get sick. Are you able to still pay those monthly expenses that you have in that budget? That's where you get that number from. So if you have a budget, then you multiply that by 3 or 6, and that gives you the number that you would be working with towards that emergency savings account. But thinking about it long term, I think that one of the struggles, and I'm guilty of it as well, this is one of the things I love about what I do and my team that I'm working with, is that we all bring our own personal financial experience to the table. That's why I say it's no judgment zone completely, because we've all been there in terms of having to make hard decisions and decide, do I buy this house? Do I rent this apartment? Do I buy this car? After looking at, well, what's my financial capacity? Not looking at, well, this is just, I want to have it right now. Immediate gratification typically is one of those spaces that can get a lot of folks in challenging positions, because then longer term down the road, it may or may not work out for them.
Talked about stability, and usually a lot of this we don't think about this, and you talked about your facts, knowing your facts, having that budget, having those numbers. But a lot of times the decisions, when we actually make them, they're very emotional. Um,
Yes, yes, they are completely. I mean, I know we've all. I feel like maybe most of us have heard that saying of like not doing. Don't go to the grocery store when you're starving because
yes,
you're going to buy all the things that you may not have really intended to buy, or it's just because you're hungry, and then you may regret it later. So
right.
same thing applies. I know one of the tools that or tips that we used to give to clients is if there's something that you really want to buy from the store, give yourself 24 hours. And if you still really want it, you still feel like you got to have it, okay, then go back. But that's after you've had a moment to come down off of that kind of adrenaline rush. Because
Yeah.
we know that shopping can give that to
It can get us in trouble. It can
Mhm.
absolutely get us in trouble. You talked about stability. You talked about knowing your numbers, and I know that earlier I alluded to this two terms: financial literacy and financial wellness. And if anyone that's watching goes to making change, you're going to find the term financial wellness, and that's not the term that we usually hear. The term that we usually hear is financial literacy. Um, why do you guys make that distinction? Why are you guys concentrating on financial wellness, not just literacy?
So two things. I've been consistently trying to make that shift from from financial literacy to financial education.
Mm,
That it's not, literacy, I believe, just has a different connotation
mm-hmm,
than
mm-hmm,
financial education. And I believe that financial education is just is more of an empowering space. It's more of, it's not that you're illiterate, you know how to add and subtract. It's
mm-hmm,
that you just need to be educated on how to use those tools to be able to work to your benefit.
mm,
So, in terms of financial wellness, more often than not, we are inundated every day with physical wellness. Go for a walk, go to the gym, other spaces of wellness. So, when we talk about financial wellness, it's really about, you're first of all, you're going to have those ups and downs. If we compare this again to like a physical journey, we're getting close to the end of the year, so we'll be at January 1 soon, and everyone has like these physical goals they want to meet. I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm gonna go to the gym 3-4 times a week. If we transition that and also think about that in the same way with our financial wellness, I'm going to take 30 minutes out my week to pay attention to my budget. I'm going to take 10 minutes out the week to be able to look at my bank statements to make sure that everything is accurate. I'm going to once a quarter look at my credit report that you can pull for free at no cost from annualcreditreport.com for free once a year. Then those kinds of wellness bring a different kind of different sense of empowerment
yeah.
for our clients, I think, and for people in general. Because first of all, I know this for certain, and this is also because I've experienced it myself. Finances can be one of the toughest things for us to face.
Mm-hmm,
And part of it is, I think, just as a society, it's we are inundated with these messages when you turn on the radio in your car, when you get on social media, when you get mail notices to your house about buy this. And so we live in a very consumer driven economy. And part of that is that everything that comes to your door, you don't necessarily have to partake in.
mm,
So the idea of, this idea of financial education, that's you taking the step to learn about where am I currently in my financial state, to then how am I going to take better care or take care and notice at all of where I am wellness wise, because that financial, it's a lifelong journey. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Tell people time and time again. I personally have started over probably 3 times financially. And so it doesn't just end with, well, and not that this relates to me personally, but I've had a bankruptcy. So I'll never be able to buy anything ever again on credit. Or, I've had a foreclosure. I'll never be able to buy a home again. It's a matter of paying more attention to where you are and where you want to get to.
Mm.
So one of the things that we, our one-on-one counselor, provides to clients is something called an action plan. And it's plans can change, but that plan at least starts to give you some direction on these are the things that you'll need to work on. And these are the steps in terms of how you can reach that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be in several different phases for you. Every person is really individualized in that sense, because while someone may need to tackle debt, someone else may need to really put more towards savings. And I know I've talked about emergency savings, but of course, we're also talking about just general savings. Sometimes people like to take trips. That's a separate savings. There's also retirement.
Mm.
And these are things that I think that oftentimes we kind of put on the back burner because we figure we always have time.
Right.
But what better time to face it than the present?
You know, you're giving us a lot of power with the things that you're saying. You're giving us, the power to take charge, the power to look at where we are, the power to really start a new way of living. Like, I love what you just said. Take time every month to just sit down and kind of like look at where things are. If you don't do that already, right? Like, that's the other thing that I love about what you just said, that you acknowledge that this is a personal journey, that this is, building habits and making it a way of living. Just like exercise, just like
Yes.
the way we eat, just like everything else, it's really important if we want to reach that stability that you talked about earlier. If we want to make sure that we create plans that are going to put us in a good place, you know, 15, 10, 15, 5 years, 20 years, however many years from now, to reach your goals, it's really, really important to continue to develop that relationship. And what I love also, Jasmine, about what you just said is that you haven't even talked about how much, which is what we usually think. We usually put the number
Yes.
next to financial wellness. We think of financial wellness in terms of a number. And where does the number come from? I think that right now we let like social media, and we let
Yeah.
other people tell us what the number really is, when what I'm hearing you say is you got to sit down and you got to figure out what that number is for you. You got to, that's what I'm hearing. Like, I'm hearing you give us the power to really own our financial wellness and our financial journeys, and I love that.
And that's exactly why I have this shift towards financial empowerment. I mean, be empowered because, again, these folks will hear me say this 10 more times probably, but each person's situation is different. So I can't tell you, oh, you have to put $500 a month away, because 500 for one person might mean something completely different for someone else. We can talk about and give suggestions or recommendations on, whether that's 10%. There are different budgeting strategies. So I think, for instance, 50, 30, 20, where 50% of your income goes towards your standard expenses that you have. 30% might go towards some of your wants, and then that other 20% goes towards your savings. But that's just one budgeting strategy. There's also proportion. There are just like three other, and we have workshops on this that Deshaun Robinson from my team, the financial counseling educator, presents on. But you have to pick which strategy is going to work best for you. I mean, same with debt management. You will often hear people say, "Oh, well, you got to pay off the debt that's the highest amount first." But what happens if you're someone that needs to see your progress pretty quickly? What happens
Mhm.
if you need to see, like, oh, this is actually working? So there are two different strategies and that we talk about often with debt management, where you pay off the highest debt with the highest interest rate first. Do you know how long it might take someone to pay off $5,000 of a credit card, as opposed to someone who might have a $300 credit card and they can figure out, okay, I will not do these things financially. I won't pay for these things. You'll still pay your bills, but maybe you will reduce your entertainment, or maybe you'll reduce some other expense so that you can pay that credit card down. And then you see that more quickly. And so it just depends on the person. Again, our job is not to tell you, well, Chris, you have to do X, Y, and Z. No, you don't have to do any of this. These are some options that you can decide what's going to work best for you. Because it's just like when we think about going back to fitness, if you talk about diets, most of the times you notice folks that as soon as they have to give something up, that's when they want it more now than ever. They don't even eat.
Why are you talking about me here?
They don't even like ice cream, but they're like, I want some ice cream tonight. So you can't, it's not something that should be forced upon someone. It's really empowering them and saying, hey, here are your options. Let me educate you on what are some ways to get you to where you're going to. And that really takes us to the idea of knowing where you want to go.
So, and Jasmine, even like your personality, like I love that you just said, okay, why am I going to tell you to pay off the card that has the highest limit when you need that quick result, when you need to be able to see that in order to be able to continue to do this? Like, it's just understanding of yourself, of how it is that you work, right? What your goals are, and what are the things that you need to be able to see. So setting up those smaller goals that you can go ahead and pat yourself on the back in the journey are just as important as what I just heard you say. And I think that's so powerful. The first time I hear this, when thinking about financial wellness, I mean, I've heard it, for weight, I've heard it for health, like in so many other places I have heard it. I had never heard it in financial wellness. I had never heard it, when thinking about money and how to develop that relationship with money, because we don't think about this, but it's a relationship that we have to have with money, and that's where making change can help us, figure all that out. And I love that you're saying we're not going to tell you what to do. We're just going to help you figure it out. Now, as people are figuring these things out and, realizing that their financial wellness, that every person's financial wellness journey is different, are there certain key elements that everyone, maybe somebody who's watching, somebody who's listening should start maybe thinking about and keeping in mind as they embark in this journey of financial wellness?
So again, first things first is understanding where you're starting from. And even before you get there, you mentioned, I want to circle back real quick about this idea of financial wellness, because your financial wellness actually plays a role into your wellness otherwise. A lot of times people are really stressed out and uncomfortable and anxious as it relates to money. And again, I'll speak from my personal experience. Once I became more in tune with knowing what I have and where it's going and what I'm trying to get to, I feel a lot less stressed out. And so knowing what your why is.
Couples, marriages, they break up because of financial issues.
Yes. So what's your why? Is it that you will want to address your finances because you recognize that I'm overspending, or that I need to work on this credit score, that I'm really using a lot of this credit as opposed to some other, as opposed to cash? Figure out what your why is, because that is exactly what a counselor will talk to the clients about, because then that helps to really us figure out how do we design whatever action plan that's going to be created for them to get to work towards that goal. And one of the things that we do tell clients is that you got to have patience with this. So, I'll probably keep using this fitness comparison for a while, but it's almost like if it took you 2 years to gain 20 pounds, then you can't expect it to come off in a month. That is going to take some time. So the things that I think would be helpful for people that are looking to start to address their financial space is knowing where you're starting. And that may look different for different folks. So for me, it's putting it down on paper, whether that's literally a notebook or I have big post-its. So I'm looking up here at my wall. I have big post-its that I put on my wall because I need to see it. So knowing where you're starting from, what do you want to capture when you're knowing what you're starting from? Back to that budget. What's my income and what are my expenses? And then break down what you're spending your money on. A lot of times we don't realize that we might be having some frivolous spending or emotional spending or spending that is just because you swipe your card instead of
Mhm.
paying cash. And that's such a huge difference in and of itself. Swiping your card, it's right off the card. Give someone a 20 and get back $1, and then you feel a little different.
You don't even see the money, and that is when somebody brought that up to my attention, I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm seeing the numbers. He was like, yeah, but you're not touching it, you're not feeling, you're not seeing it. Actually, you're seeing the numbers get
Yep.
lower, but there's a different feeling when you have that bill in your hand, you hand it, and then you get a smaller bill in your hand. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't necessarily like that
Mhm.
feeling. Like it gives you a visceral reaction, and it makes you think a little bit before you go and spend that $20, like you were saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and if we think about the way that technology has changed around finances, so oftentimes people aren't using checks anymore. So there used to be, for some folks, this might be foreign or they've never heard of it, a check register where literally you write a check and then you have to write down the date and who it was to, how much it was for, and then you subtract that from the balance that was in your check. That is not often happening anymore. I haven't had a check since for the last probably 10 years.
I don't know of anyone who goes and checks in their account, okay, all of my expenses, this is where I went today and this is how much I spent, blah blah blah. Like you look at the bottom line number, like I have this much money in my account and I'm gonna spend this much money and that's it. But that and I had some of my family visit from Ecuador just recently, and
Uh-huh.
my aunt, every time we go out to the mall, to this, to that, she comes and she sits down and does exactly what you just described. She goes through a record, she puts it on there,
Yep.
up to the last penny, how much she spent, this and that. She would come and ask me for the receipts. I was like, oh my gosh. But then when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? That's how we need to manage our money. We need to know. I say it all the time. I'm like, you need to understand how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. I'm not doing the work, if I can be fully honest. I'm not doing. And when I saw what it looks like, I was like, wow, that's impressive. That's very impressive, and that's empowering because if I go and I ask my aunt how much money she has, how much money she needs, how much money this, she knows exactly. I don't know that I can say that about. I have a basic level knowledge of my expenses and my income and that relationship, but I don't have that dominion that she has, where she's able to say, if I want to have this much money, these are the steps that I need to take. I do not have that kind of power with my finances today. I really don't.
It's I mean, I think that could be for a couple of reasons. It's not that you're afraid of your finances, but it's
Right.
also like, well, I know I have the money in there, but if we think about, I know that for me, I can think, oh, I have the money in there, but I don't remember the other money that I just spent that was already subtracted
Yeah.
from it.
Yes. I don't
Um,
remember what happened this morning, like 2 hours ago. How am I going to remember what I spent on yesterday?
Exactly, exactly. But I'll tell you, I remember having a friend and we were talking about money. And this is before I think that I was really as ingrained and deep as into this as I am. But I would tell her, because I kept having a lot of overdraft fees. And I told her, I check my bank account literally every morning. I'm probably still in the bed and I check the bank account because I want to see what clear and what I'm working with. I've taken that a step further where literally in my room, I've moved it to my office now, out of my bedroom, but I have one of those huge post-its of all of the bills that I know I have to pay. So we're talking car note, car insurance, mortgage, home warranty, tuition for my son for college. I mean, all of those things because then it keeps it at the front of my mind. It's so easy to forget this stuff until it becomes an emergency. And that's the space that we want to get out of.
Yeah.
We want to shift from I'm only going to give this attention when I need it, as opposed to I'm always going to need this. So let me, and if you bite it off a chunk at a time, as opposed to, it's like cramming for a test. If you were
Mm-hmm.
studying all semester, you don't need to do the all nighter
Right.
because you've been preparing for this.
Right.
So that's the mental space that we want to get back into, or we want to grow into and be empowered by, because again, that financial stress, it does cause divorces. It does cause so many other physical reactions that can be extremely strenuous on
Yeah.
us. That is just something that if we just give it a little bit more attention, literally decide I'll take 10 minutes out the week and I'm going to review this stuff. You don't
I
have to
love
do
that.
it.
We talk about vision boards all the time, and
Yeah,
we say that they work because they're wiring your mind to act to reach those goals. Why not have that financial board? Why not make that financial board so that it's always at the forefront, and that so we're acting, not reacting, but acting in
exactly.
the way that's taking us to the journey that we want to have and to the financial stage that we want to have in our lives. How early? When? How soon? How old should we be when we start thinking and we start embarking in this financial wellness journey? This financial, this living our lives, thinking about our finances.
I think as early as possible, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, what just came to mind when you said that was the child that goes to the store with their parent and they are throwing a tantrum on the floor because they can't get something.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, I think, is that for some reason, it's not all households, but finances isn't something that's openly discussed, which I think then attaches a stigma in some ways. It's not necessarily in a positive direction of how we think about money. So I think that as young as possible, and I mean, of course, it looks different at different ages, at different stages of your life. It could be something as simple as someone who has, a younger child of starting a piggy bank. We don't do
Mm-hmm.
that anymore because we think of everything of online banking and we don't go to the bank. But I remember there being a period of time where parents would have their kids have piggy banks and then you take them to the bank, put them in the change counter, and then they deposit it into an account. So it's about kind of starting as early as possible to set those tones and putting those ideologies into our young folks' minds about how to think about money. So I think that is something that should happen at every age group. I mean, Making Change has started to do more work with young people. I just did a workshop a couple of weeks ago to some high school students about paying for college and what are some options and how to think about that. But we're also doing a after school program with Wild Lake Community Association for their high school students and middle school students about how to think about money, and doing our I would say our one of our signature workshops of finances one-on-one. What are the basics? What do you need to know? But I think that the sooner that we start to have those open conversations, I even tell clients who want to buy a house and are still possibly using a lot of credit, which means that their debt to income is still going to be high. Having that conversation with them that, hey, have you thought about having a conversation with your family, with your kids, if it's a single parent or a two-parent household, with your kids and your family about this is what the goal is and this is how we can all work together towards this,
Yeah.
and making sure that it's inclusive, but and also an open book about this is what's happening. And so if we want a house, if you want your own room, if you want a big backyard, if you want, then this is how we can all work towards that. I think it sets the tone pretty early on about understanding some financial aspects, but then also them seeing kind of the proof is in the pudding of if you do X, then Y and Z will follow.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Jasmine, I think that's really important because you're right. I mean, kids don't even see the money. Maybe as parents, we are taking those steps and we have an account, a savings account for them, but we don't involve them in that process, right? So we
Hmm.
need to be very clear on what our goal is. Is it to just leave that money there in an account available to them? Or is it to teach them how to manage that money? Is it to teach them to have that relationship? Um, I know that, I come from Ecuador, and it's a country where I didn't have a whole lot. I come from a single parent household. My mom was always working. I knew we didn't have a whole lot of money. I understood my reality. So I knew that to be in the school that I was in a private school that cost a lot of money. My mom would have never been able to afford that. So it was kind of like my responsibility to get certain grades so that I could continue to get a scholarship so that I could continue to be in that school. So I was part of that process without really understanding it. So that's what you just said resonated so much with me because as a parent, when I was a parent, and obviously I'm still a parent, but when my kids were younger, I don't know that I included them in those conversations because I didn't want to stress them out.
Exactly. That's exactly it, Chris. And the idea that guess what? It doesn't have to be stressful. It
Yes.
does not have to be stressful. And I think that the more that we kind of withhold, that we say, oh, I'll just deal with this. And then we're stressed out and
Yeah.
crazy. But then we're also kind of robbing our kids from knowing like this is what was going on. And this is how teach them the lessons of things that we missed.
Exactly, because thinking back, even though I didn't have the full understanding, my mom gave me the power to help her. She maybe never said it that way, and it was
Mhm.
kind of like an implicit relationship, but I understood what I needed to do if I wanted to continue in that school, if I wanted to continue to have that. I knew what my part, at least for that little portion of my life was that I
Right.
needed to play, and the finances in our home. At least that part I had ownership over. And
Yeah.
thinking back now, I'm like, wait a minute, that was actually very powerful for me to know that I could be part of the solution. I didn't understand it at the time. I honestly, I mean, just with you speaking right now, as I'm, kind of like looking back in time, it's like, wait a minute, my mom gave me one of the most powerful tools by making me part of the process and giving me that responsibility, right? And I didn't understand it. And sadly, I have to admit it that I didn't give my kids necessarily that power. But that's not to say that it's too late,
Right.
right? We can start that journey. So if you're like me, if you're a parent, you're realizing I have been keeping my kids away because I don't want them to know all the struggles. Well, don't show them the struggles, but show them the power. Where do they have power? Where can they help you? Where can they be part of that solution? That's what you can show them, and that's how you can start them in a beautiful relationship with money and understanding money. Not waiting until being 40 some years old to start having and developing that relationship, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Jasmine, what are some of the services, right? As we're thinking about this, as for ourselves, for our families, for our kids, for everyone, what are some of the ways in which making change, some of the services that are available through you guys, so that we can start, having those conversations, having that journey?
sure. So we do provide group education workshops, and so the majority of them are via Zoom and online. So you can log in from anywhere. They are available on our website, makingchangecenter.org. You can also contact us if you're interested in one-on-one counseling, which gives you that one-on-one and directed attention to specifically talk about what challenges you might be working through and where you're trying to get to. For anyone interested, they can certainly send us an email at info at makingchangecenter.org. And then we know the tax season is coming up, so we do offer free tax preparation. And we do this in partnership with the Internal Revenue Service as well as the Cash Campaign of Maryland. And so they said that this is the one program that does have an income maximum, I believe, for this upcoming tax season. It'll be for households or taxpayers that earned up to $67,000. to be able to receive this service for free at no cost. And we have a number of sites in Howard County, with the main one at the Howard County Multi-Service Center at 9900 Washington Boulevard. I believe we'll be partnering again with Howard Community College, as well as with some apartment complexes. So that those are the three services that they could come to us for. Again, that's group education, one-on-one counseling, and the VITA service, which is free tax preparation.
So there's a lot that making change can do and does for us. And I put on the comments, the email and the website that you can send. But there's two things that I want to make sure that before we wrap our conversation up this morning that we mentioned. I know that you guys have a big goal to give away laptops to everyone in our community. So I really want you to talk about that program that's going on right now and invite people to come and get maybe if they qualify, get a free laptop.
Sure. So we are partnering with Howard County to distribute Chromebooks to income qualifying Howard County residents. And so, Chris, I don't know what the best way to share it, because the income, if it's based on income, there are different levels based dependent on household size. So I'm not sure if that could be.
For the flyer. Yeah, I'm looking for the flyer so I can put it on the screen.
And then there is so it's either, so first you have to be a Howard County resident. Second, you can qualify income wise in one of two ways: either that you meet the income level, or that you receive government benefits. And so I want to make that clear: it's income or government benefits. I know that we've had some folks that say, well, I earn more than this amount, but if you receive Social Security or Medicaid, then you qualify. And then the last one is that through this program, that it's only one Chromebook per household. There are 9 participating agencies, so we do have access to the portal. So we would be verifying that the recipient hasn't received one from another organization. This is not in connection with the Chromebooks that students receive from the public school system in Howard County. So they're completely separate. So I know that we've had a couple questions about that. So again, Howard County resident, you meet the income guidelines, or you receive a government benefit, and that it's only one Chromebook per household. We do have our final distributions happening today, October 30th, as well as tomorrow, October 31st. And hopefully you'll be able to share the flyer with those details.
I know. It's taking me. So I wanted, let's see, I think I found it. So let me see, share screen, and, yeah. Okay. So this is the acceptance form, right? This is where the household information is.
Exactly.
And
so they just have to meet those income, and you see the income levels depend on household size. So just make sure that you just verify that information, and then you can see some of the government benefits that are listed here. And you can come to any of the distribution events. I can tell you that one is today at the Howard County Multi-Service Center. I believe it's 12 to 3:30. And when you come, just bring your photo ID. Hopefully it has your Howard County address on it. If for some reason it does not, then bring a copy of your lease or utility bill. And then for income, we would just need to see your pay stubs for the last 30 days. If it's for government benefits, then we just need to see that benefit. So oftentimes folks can show us like a SNAP card or a Medicaid card. We don't keep any of that information. We just need to see it to verify and run you through the portal to make sure that we confirm that you're a Howard County resident. And then you just complete the acceptance form, and then you've got a free laptop to be able to use.
And the laptop, you can see it right there on the screen. It's as you see it right there on that picture. These are take a screenshot if you're watching right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to put that on there. I know that I've shared it on Howard County Latina, and I know that I share it on a couple of other groups, but feel free, if this is information that you like, feel free to send me a message via Facebook or whatever, and I'll send you that, or you can, I'm sure, send it to Jasmine as well. Her email is right there, info@makingchange.org. And we'll make sure to get this information to you, but it has been shared on Facebook and you can see all of the distribution sites right there on our screen. So I
Great.
wanted to make sure that we share that information because I know that this is, that this is available, and I want our community to have it. So I just
Yes.
want to make sure we put that information out. I also want to make sure that we tell people that, this is not the one and only time that we're going to connect with Making Change here in Conectados. So I'm very, very excited about this new partnership. And Jasmine, I want to give you the floor to tell everyone what they can expect to see here from here on.
Sure. So we will first. I will say I it would be great if you are watching this and you have a financial topic that you want to hear about. Let Chris know so that we can talk about it. But I will say, I mean, we'll talk more about what is a budget. We'll talk about what are some debt management options. We will talk about how do you even approach savings. That could be such a tough thing, especially if you feel like, well, I'm barely making it as is. How do I even start to save up? We will talk about student loan challenges that folks may have. So it will run the full gamut of everything from really foundational of creating that budget to how do you build upon that to work towards your own goal of building wealth.
Yep. And the goal of that is to, as we talked earlier today and we've throughout our conversation, to make this a journey, right? To make this a way of living, to make this always forefront, like always just have it as part of our lives so that it's not the stressful, challenging topic that just comes around the holiday season or around tax
Mm-hmm.
season or when an emergency happens. That's the only time that I think about, or this, stress when I have to pay my bills. Like what we want to do is just make it into a way of living so that you can take ownership and have all of this power that Jasmine just shared with us today. So, Jasmine, as we approach the end of our conversation, I really want to thank you for your time and for giving us back this power and this understanding that if we develop this relationship with our finances, we can make them what we want them for ourselves. I think that's a powerful, powerful message that I am taking from our conversation. And I'd
Great.
love for you to also share a message with everyone. If there's something that you want to make sure that people take away from the conversation today, what would that be?
It would be that this is all up to you. This does not have to be determined by anyone else. A lot of times we get so overwhelmed with, well, such and such said I should, or such and such said I have to. Really take a moment to think about what it is that you want, what you need, because this has to be driven from yourself.
Mm.
So by taking that initial step, it does give you a whole new opening of looking at, well, I can really create this planner centered around me. I don't have to follow all these other tips and things that may or may not really resonate with me. And with that, if it doesn't resonate with you, then rethink it. And the final tip I would say is that guess what? You can make a plan today and you might decide to change it tomorrow. And that's
Mm.
okay. It does not have to mean because you write it down on paper that it's solidified, that it is carved in stone, that you can't change it. This is all completely up to you, and we are here to help you guide you through that process.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thank you for that message, Jasmine. And thank you really for this conversation and for this partnership. I'm super excited about it. Starting next week, we're going to have a segment with Making Change where, in English, it'll be Jasmine who's going to be bringing just tips and, like she said about budget and with the holidays coming up, I know she has some great tips that she's going to be bringing us around that. So just stay tuned for that. Look for that segment every week now as part of Conectados and also in our version in Spanish. We're also going to have this segment in Spanish because it is important that all of our community has access. I would translate it to other languages. Unfortunately, I don't speak other languages, but this is something that everybody in our community needs to have access to. So thank you so much, Jasmine, for this relationship, for this partnership, and thank you for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care. And we are going to continue with Conectados. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with the events of the weekend. That is all that I have for you today. Those are all the events that are happening around Howard County this weekend. If you'd like to have your events included on our segment, please email me at info@crisoviedo.com. And that's it for our show today. Thanks for joining me to Conectados. I will be back next Wednesday at 9 a.m. If you have ideas or comments, you can email them at info@crisoviedo.com. Also, if you or someone you know, family member, a neighbor, a teacher, a coworker, anyone you know, anyone in your church, in your parish, anyone you know has a life story that's worth telling, that you feel that it's important for the world to see and know, please contact me. info@crisoviedo.com. I want to start collecting stories of our community, and I want to start giving them a platform, the platform really that they deserve. And if you have ideas, if there are other topics that you would like me to cover here in Conectados, also send me an email at info@crisoviedo.com. Thank you all so much for accompanying me and being part of the conversation today. I really appreciate it. Please share with others so that others may also benefit and connect with our content. And until next time, until next week, until Friday in Spanish, and until next week, Wednesday in English, thank you so much for watching. I am Cris Oviedo.